Good evening. My name is Wendy Greuel. I am an executive in residence at the Nazarian College of Business and Economics, and so happy to be here, not only in that position, but as a friend of Michael Grillo. We both worked at DreamWorks Movie Studios many, many years ago, well, a few years ago, when we were really young there. But I'm so happy to be here, and I do want to make sure that you all acknowledge our incredible dean of the Nazarian College who is here, Chandra Subramanian. So you all know Chandra. And a special thank you to Courtney McIntyre and Jordan Hilo, who made this all happen tonight and work, so give them a great round of applause. So we want this to be really informal. That's why we have these chairs, and I think Michael and I want to be able to have this as a discussion. Like we're sitting in our living room talking about how entertainment industry works and how it relates to business, all of that. And we are going to leave plenty of time for questions. We think that's really the best part of this, is really that interaction. And so I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and participating in it. So I'm going to start with some of the questions I have, and Michael will be able to. He is a fabulous storyteller, so you're going to hear a lot of great stuff tonight. But the one thing I learned about Michael, even though we had known each other at DreamWorks Studios, was that he was a cheerleader here at Cal State University Northridge.
That's the way we're going to start.
That is the way we're going to start.
That's what you're going to do?
That's what I'm going to do to you.
Right.
But anyways, you were here at a very interesting time. And I know you've shared some stories with me. In 1971, it was called?
San Fernando Valley State College.
Yeah.
But it was actually 1966 that I started.
1966.
So.
And so that wasn't it. So tell us a little bit about when you look back at your days at CSUN and what it was like here. Different from today, and what kind of led you on this path?
It was a commuter campus. There were very few dorms here. There were very few places to stay. A lot of people commuted here to school. Again, when I first started, I was pretty active. I was in a fraternity. I was a cheerleader. I was, got very involved in student activities and intramural sports and all of that. And then in 1968, Robert Kennedy came here to speak. And
how many of you knew that Robert Kennedy spoke here at CSUN? Oh, see? Okay.
And after he spoke here that evening, he went to the Ambassador Hotel and he was assassinated. And so that was the world that we're in. It became very, very political very, very quickly. Vietnam War was raging at that time. And honestly, I was a marketing major, in business. And when I started, I was a pretty good student when I started, and I kind of wasn't always a good student, to be honest with you. I got very involved in a lot of these other things. And one thing that became very important for all the males that were going to school here was we majored in not getting drafted. I mean, to be honest with you, you wanted to have at least 12 units a semester of 2.0 to make sure that you weren't eligible for the draft. And I had friends that were killed in the war, and I mean, honestly, you lost a little bit of the focus of what your major was, When I graduated, I remember one of the last classes I took, I'm sitting in the back of the room, I've got a ponytail, I've got a beard, and I have my dog Virgo with me, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it in business. No one's going to hire me, And but when I did graduate, the lottery system had just started, and so literally, it came down to like a hat and all the birthdays in a hat, and they pulled the numbers out, and if they pull you out right at the beginning, then you're going to go to Vietnam. So I sat one day, having graduated, knowing that I was either going to go to Vietnam and fight in the war, or I knew that I was never going to get drafted, and I was going to get on a plane, I was going to go to Europe, and I was going to be a good American hippie and hitchhike all over Europe, which I got lucky. I got a good number. And so I did that, and came back. And the experience that I had in college, it was interesting because an awful lot of it had to do with working with larger groups of people. It had to do with communication skills. It had to, I mean, I was the most amazing crammer, and I'm still really good at that right now. And I think part of it was I had kind of a lousy work ethic, so it forced me to do that. Now working in the film business, as you know, things change constantly. You're getting new scripts, new pages, somebody's sick, or hurricanes coming on. You know, you're constantly, so you're working 24/7. I learned how to do that really well when I was in college, just trying to get through, you know.
Well, you told me a story, and they have on there, if you want to know what they'll have on their sheets, these are all the movies that you have had some directing, producing, that's there on your, and it's credits, so so you know, they have all of that.
Okay.
But you told me the story about applying to this program at the Directors Guild. And a funny story about how you were actually denied, but you didn't think you did get denied.
What happened was I came back, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my career. With my career, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I heard about the Directors Guild training program, where you need to have a college degree. You could major in anything. You apply to this program, and if you're fortunate enough to get in, they assign you to different motion picture and TV shows and commercials, and you also go to seminars, and you really, you really get involved in it. After 400 working days, you become a member of the Directors Guild of America. And at that point in my life, I'm thinking, well, gosh, if I could get in, I might make a couple of dollars. It sounds kind of fun. Maybe I'll meet some girls and travel a little. I mean, it's like, pretty deep thinking, right? There were about 1,500 applicants, and they only do it once a year. There are about 1,500 applicants. Out of that, they took 10 to 15 people. So I took
your odds were not so good then, right?
Your odds are really not good. But you're going to hear that all the time. Doesn't matter. There are jobs out there. If you want those jobs, go get them. Somebody's going to get hired. Make yourself be the one that gets hired. So I took the exam, scored in the top 10%, which I don't exactly know how I did that. Went through the interview process, and I actually got a letter saying that I wasn't accepted. And I think that's when my career started, because I picked up the phone and I called the head of the program. I thought they'd made a clerical error because they didn't pick me. And he laughed really hard. He said, "No, we didn't want you." And I went, "Okay." So I said, "That's what I'm going to do." So over the next year, I worked in construction for a while. I got a job in the mailroom. Yep, it still works, believe it or not. I started taking some film classes, and I got a Super 8 camera. I went out and started making my own movies. And a year later, I took the exam. I was fortunate enough to get into the program, and immediately was assigned to television shows at Universal Studios, where I did like Kojak, McMillan and Wife, $6 Million Man. Do you guys remember $6 Million Man?
I was going to say, yeah.
Remember the title sequence in $6 Million Man, where they're making him, strong, and they're giving him all the body parts, and they're doing this and they're doing that? It's my eye.
Yeah.
Just.
It's your eye?
I'm just saying, yeah.
That was your eye?
When I worked on the show, they didn't like Lee Major's eyes, so they shot my eye. And I got a free breakfast. I wasn't good at negotiating then.
Well, I think the lesson learned there is never take no for an answer, and if you don't get it the first time, you'll get it the second time.
Yeah,
absolutely. To be able to do that.
Yep.
So we have students here from both the business school and some from, I think, the Curb school as well.
Yep.
Kind of talk about the intersection of business. I mean, what does a producer do, executive producer, and how is the intersection between business and entertainment? How does that work? Because most people just see the credits and you go, who is that person and why do they, why do they get a credit? What do they really do?
When you see a credit on a movie, it can represent someone's contribution. It could mean they got the financing together and really packaged the project, maybe hired a screenwriter, worked with a script, got an actor tied to it, maybe put the whole thing together and sold it to a financial group, maybe a studio, maybe somebody independently. It could be someone that works more in physical production that really, after it's kind of moving forward, hires the crew and oversees the production, the budget, and things like that. It can be, honestly, it can be a writer that's working on the show and they don't have the money to pay them what they really need to pay them. or they want them to get away from the project and they want to, you know, buy them out or whatever. They don't have the money to do it, so they give them a producer credit. Or it could be who you're dating. I mean, it can be all different kinds of things. I mean, out of it. It's
all in the contract. It's all in what's negotiated.
I've worked on shows where I met the producer on the last day of shooting, and I tried to throw him off the set because I had no idea who it was. And he was just so thrilled to be on a set,
right?
You know, because he had no clue how to, and that was the producer of the movie. So it varies in a lot of different ways. For me, I started. And I was an assistant director, so I was the guy on the set directing the background with the bullhorn, scheduling the movies, running the show. And then I eventually evolved into being a producer. And now, you know, I've been, the last 10, 12 years, I've been doing a lot of these Marvel projects. And what happens with these bigger movies is they're in development for a long time. They're working, they've got a script, they have an idea, it's usually based on the comic book, on the characters. They'll work on a draft of the screenplay, they'll continue developing it, they'll be locking up their actors, they'll be trying to figure out availabilities on everybody, there'll be a whole slate of movies that they might want to do over a 10-year period, and it can be the combination of Marvel or Disney and trying to fill in all these dates. And they're getting a little closer, they're getting excited, they think it's getting closer to getting made, and then they go, well, now what do we do? Because those people don't actually know how to make a movie.
Right.
So that when they hire me, I actually know how to do that part. So they will bring me in and they'll hand me a screenplay. And like in this case, Joe and Anthony Russo, I've done 3 movies with, were the directors. So I will sit with them, I'll read the script, I'll write some brief notes, I'll sit down with them and I'll go through my notes with them and I'll really try to get a feeling from them what the scale of the movie is going to be, what they're trying to accomplish, what scenes are most important. You know, there could be a one-line thing, and there they go, and to them it could be the biggest car chase ever, but I don't know it because it's not on the page. So it's important that I get all that information from them, and then I sit down really on the first page of the script, and I write down everything I think I need there, and go to the next page and write it all down, and break it all out, and I take a look at the scale of it, and I'll break it out and put it in my computer, and I'll schedule the show, and then I'll just start making assumptions. You know, I'll say, well, you know, this kind of a show with this kind of cast and these kind of things, I think we're going to need 80 days of first unit photography. And then we do have a car chase and we do have a fight, so I'm going to put in another 40 days of second unit of just stunt work. And then, you know, then we're going to put in plate photography where I think, well, you know what, we're going to shoot some of this stuff, but we're never going to be able to go to all these locations. So
because you have to do it within a budget. I mean, that's the other part of the business side.
But first, I'm not even thinking about the budget. I'm really trying to quantify what it is. I can't be backing into that yet. First, I have to see what I've been given. And I put this whole thing together, and then I have an accountant that I work with, a production manager that I work with. We'll start running all the numbers, and we'll just come up with a production plan. And I'll say, look, if we can start next month, I think it's going to take 6 months to prep, you know, 6 months to shoot, another 8 months for post. I think roughly with these assumptions, with this cast, with these amount of days and shooting these places, the movie's going to cost about that amount of money, and you'll have it ready for the summer of boom, you know. And that's enough for them to go, okay, well, we're not doing that, and you know, that's the start, right?
Or do you
and then
say
you start
if you
doing
want,
the dance.
if you want to do that really expensive car shoot, you're going to have to raise X more money, you know, millions of dollars or whatever it is to make it happen, because it doesn't. If you want to do everything, it may cost more than you expect.
Yep.
And go back.
And there's that menu that you start to put together. I mean, like one of them could be like, let's say this is a scene that we're filming right now in this theater. Well, one of the things that I would do is I'd go through the script. And like, let's say we're only here for a day. Well, I'd go through the script and I'd find 3 other scenes that maybe could take place here. Maybe it could be a development scene where there's only 5 people in the corner and not a bunch of extras. Or we could do this or that. I can find something down the hall. Or I'll be out scouting just myself. I'll run around. I'll look in the parking lot. I'll see if I can put more days together, because that's going to be much more efficient to use the set over and over again, to repurpose it, to move the company here with all the trucks, get moved in and set here. And it's just an economy. And if I do that for 3 or 4 days, maybe I can pull a day out of the schedule. So there's a million tricks like that. Maybe I can use this as a cover set, and then I'm shooting exteriors out there, and it just slowly starts to come together.
And then problems happen. I was reminding him, it was one of his staff members when I was at DreamWorks. We were filming Road Trip. I don't know if any of you have watched that movie of college, you know, doing things you shouldn't be doing. And it was going to be filmed in Georgia, and all of a sudden, the campus that we were going to do it had been in the top 10 party schools in the state, and had just, in the country, had just gotten off the list. And they said, you can't film here anymore. And they had done all of the work to film there. They were going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so my job was to call the governor of the state and the head of all the universities and convince them that we were going to be able to still film there. And they ended up doing it because they said, we're not going to film any iconic buildings, like you wouldn't use CSUN's building here if that was your library that is iconic. And we're going to train some of your kids. They're going to be able to be on the set. But that was a few days of, you would have lost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's kind of the problem solver. You described when we were chatting a moment ago too about it almost being like a wedding planner, right? Mm-hmm. In that you are told you got to get this date has to be done by this time. Were there skills that you kind of got at CSUN, and you chatted a bit about this, about, meeting people, doing what it takes to succeed, never giving up? Those are, how was CSUN's experience, part of that?
Well, it's really problem solving, I think, more than anything else. And the thing is it's changed so much now. We didn't have computers. So it was like you learned how to navigate the library if you were looking for information, and I don't need people even go to libraries now so much, but there's certainly other resources that you can get to. And what's great now is you can get to them at 3 o'clock in the morning if you need to, you can get to anything. So again, I think just the process of being challenged with things and trying to figure out how to solve them and be successful at the end of the day. Again, I think I evolved into it. One of the things that helped me get a better work ethic and work harder towards films is very early on I realized it was this gigantic collaboration. And particularly as I moved up into it, and I became a producer, and I really impacted this whole process, was that if on any day I failed, it meant that like maybe Steven Spielberg isn't going to get a chance to shoot the scene that he really wanted to shoot, or not the way he wanted to shoot it, and it's going to last forever. That movie's going to last forever. So if I'm working on Private Ryan and I'm working with Steven Spielberg, I'm not going to fail on my end. I'm going to win. I just have that mentality, and I can work 24/7. I can not sleep, whatever, because I don't want Steven walking up to me and saying, why don't I have the whatever, I hate that part.
And speaking, there's no one more famous and inspirational than Steven Spielberg, and you did many movies with him.
I did.
Saving Private Ryan, I think American Beauty, several. What would you, give us a little, window into working with Steven Spielberg and some, part of that inspired you?
I'll start with, there are hundreds of jobs working in the entertainment business. And honestly, it's the greatest gig in the world. And no matter what you study, no matter who you are out here in the audience, there's actually an opportunity at a job for you. There just is. And you got to try to figure out what you do well and how you fit into it. But you can be a lawyer, you can be a mathematician, you can be a chef. It doesn't matter what it is that you do. You can be a writer, you can be a director. There are those opportunities for you, and you try to figure out how you're going to fit in and make it work. And sometimes you can't know until you get out there and you start getting dirty and you figure out what you can contribute, what you can't. Working with Steven, one of the things that you find out really quickly, I found out at least for myself, is that I'm not a director. Because he has things that he does. His take on storytelling, on this whole thing, is just so unique, and it comes from, I don't know where it comes from. It's just, he was kind of born with it. He's just kind of a genius. So there'd be times where I'd be working, and I'd go to visit the set because I oversaw all the productions, all the Amblin productions and the DreamWorks productions. I get this phone call out of nowhere. And they're just forming DreamWorks Studios, and do you want to be head of production for DreamWorks? And what I really want to say is, I have no idea what that job is. I don't even know if I want that or not,
But it was Steven Spielberg.
It was Steven Spielberg, so I said, and then I had to interview with Steven, and I had to interview with Jeffrey Katzenberg, and I had to pretend like I knew what I was talking about. But I realized really early on, nobody really knew what they were talking about because none of us were studio folks. We were all filmmakers. That's, I think, why we got along so well. So then with Steven, you know, you'd be working on all these shows, you'd be doing all this stuff, and I'm a pretty linear guy. I do a lot of notes, and I'm, you know, pretty organized with all that stuff. And then you go, and you're on the set, and it's the crew that I've hired and put together, or people that work with Steven for a long time, and you got this cast, you got this screenplay, you have all this stuff. And I remember I was in Boston, and we're filming Amistad. And Anthony Hopkins has this big speech, and he is basically representing the slaves, and he's trying to defend them and support them. And if he loses, they all die. I mean, that's, you know, simplistic way of presenting it. So he has this great big speech, and I'm standing behind the camera, and Steven sets me up, puts me in a chair so I can watch, and I'm watching this thing, and Anthony Hopkins gives this big speech, and I'm going, he's getting an Oscar. We're going to get best picture. This is going to be great, you know. And it's like, and we cut, and Steven says, great, cut, print, new deal. And I'm thinking, yeah, because there's nothing else we could do. This is fabulous. And then all of a sudden I see him go, wait a minute. And he brings Janusz, his director of photography, over. He brings Anthony Hopkins over. He brings the dolly grip over, and they're talking over in a corner. And they're talking for about 5 minutes. And I go, what could they be talking about? I mean, it can't get any better than this. So then they go, okay, we want to go again. I go, well, this is going to be interesting to see what they're doing. So they start, and there's a dolly that's kind of going back and forth, you know, following Anthony Hopkins. And we start the take, and it's this big speech. And no matter where the dolly goes, Anthony Hopkins seems to keep giving him the back. Instead of his face, he's giving him his back. And he's talking a lot softer. And now I'm behind the camera watching, but what I really am is I'm an audience member. I'm the audience that's going to go see this movie. And now I can't quite hear him, and I can't quite see him. And I'm doing this on the set, and I'm leaning forward, and I am listening to every single word. He has me. Because I can't quite hear it, I can't quite see, and I don't want to miss anything. And I'm so invested as an audience member, right? And at the very end, as he's finishing his speech, he turns and the camera zooms in, and the only word that I really heard clearly was the end of the speech. Anthony Hopkins said, freedom. And I started crying.
Yeah.
It hit me, oops, sorry. I got really emotional,
yeah.
You know? And I go, well, that's why Steven Spielberg, I guess, you know, he does stuff like that, you know?
He does.
And it was constant, you know, when we did Saving Private Ryan, we were trying to do it for a number. And he understood that, and he's a businessman and a producer. So we didn't shoot it in England, we shot it in Ireland. We shot it on a beach where when the tides came, they didn't go all the way to the cliffs, the whole opening sequence, so that we could keep equipment there on the beach overnight, and we could come back and pick it up again the next day. And we had the Irish Army that basically worked for free for us. We had all these perks and incentives to be in Ireland to shoot it, and he was willing to do that even though it wasn't a perfect match. And when he shot it, he decided that he didn't want to scout the location. He wanted to land on the beach just as the soldiers had in World War II. He wanted to see it from the But the one thing that he agreed to with Janusz's DP was that the majority of the shots would be handheld at this level so that you felt that you were involved in the war. It was all being a soldier and into it. And his shooting schedule, he would go up 30 yards and he'd draw a line in the sand and he'd go, that's Monday. And then he'd film them going all the way up to about that line, and that was Monday, and then he'd draw another line, that's Tuesday, we're gonna be to the cliffs by Friday. And if you go back and look at the movie, you know, you do feel like you're into it, and you don't see the scale of all of it until the very end. We're up on the cliff, and you're looking back, and all the ships are out in the water and all this stuff, and you get a sense of the scale of all of it, and that was on purpose, everything that he did.
So you're all going to have to go rent Saving Private Ryan or probably get.
And he got a note, by the way, from a veteran about the sound and how noisy it was. And that's where he came up with when Tom got off the boat and went underwater and it got quiet, and you only saw the bullets going through, and then he came up and it was so loud, and then there was the explosion that blew out his ears and everything. That was a note from a veteran. So he's like a sponge, taking it all in and learning.
Learning about that.
Yeah.
So you've done over 100 films.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
between us, what was your favorite?
Not doing
Just
that.
between us, a couple of, just unique ones. Maybe I'll use that. Your unique ones, or an actor. I mean, even though you've met obviously a lot of actors, but there's that one you go, I can't believe I met that person, or I got to work with that person. So give us a little insight if you can. It is just between us, but a couple favorites. You don't have to just one.
It's really tough because, let's do this.
Obviously, Amistad was a good one.
I spent 15 years with Lawrence Kasdan. We did Body Heat, Big Chill, Silverado, Accidental Tourist, Grand Canyon, I Love You to Death, Wyatt Earp. He made me a producer. Those 15 years were unbelievable. And we were the same age, and we learned how to work really well together. And I was his assistant director and his producer, and we formed this company, and we did that for a really long time. So all those movies were really fun, really great. Got nominated for an Oscar for The Accidental Tourist. I felt really strongly that I was probably the #5 film of the 5 that were nominated that year, but thrilled to be there, and I knew I was going to get screeners and all these things, Sat in the front row at the Oscars, and the second award went to supporting actress at Gina Davis. And cause I'm sitting here thinking, well, we're not going to win, so I'm comfortable, I'm having a great time. All of a sudden, Gina wins, and there's a chance that we might win Best Picture. I've never been so terrified in my life. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't breathe for the rest of the night. I was so scared that we might win, and I might have to walk up those stairs and fall, or that God forbid they look at me and I got to say something with how many billions of people. And it was like it was the weirdest thing. You would think, oh God, I want to win so bad. I didn't want to win at all. I was so thrilled, So that was great. Working at DreamWorks was amazing. We worked with
being in there at the beginning, because a new studio had not been created in 60 years.
Yeah.
So this was, kind of a new pathway.
I mean, I came in on a Monday, and I go, okay, I'm gonna need an office, I guess. Need an assistant. And I ended up structuring it very much like I would a movie, where I had like a production manager and an accountant and a this and that made sense to me, except on just a bigger scale. But when we started, we also did all the Amblin movies. So we did like Jurassic Parks, and we did, all those. And I remember.
And Amblin was Steven's company.
Yeah, production company.
Production company, and so it was still kind of came in under the DreamWorks.
So when we started, I remember I went to New York. We had our first movie kick in, and that was Peacemaker, right, with George Clooney and Nicole Kidman. So I'm like,
just saying, George Clooney's my favorite. Like if I met George Clooney.
A quick George Clooney thing. I'm at home one night. The phone rings. It's George Clooney and Nicole Kidman. My daughter answers the phone. She's so damn excited. I pick up the phone. I'm in my office for a half an hour. I come back out. She's just so thrilled. And I have to sit her down and explain to her, when George Clooney and Nicole Kidman call me, it's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
It's never a
They're
good
not
thing.
calling to say
It's not like, you're a great guy, the movie's going great, thank you so much, Michael. In fact, I don't get a lot of those calls. When I get calls, they're usually what I call in the special category. Like, things are blowing up and stuff, So, but anyway, so now I'm on my first day. It's like we're just starting to film. I go to New York. I meet the mayor. I meet the film commission. I get promises. New York's going to be the best place to shoot. We'll do everything for you, all the support. You need anything, just call us, all this stuff. I go, great. I'm thinking, this is the greatest job in the world. And I got the Amblin movies going too, and we're prepping Zorro at the time. And now we're out on the streets. And so I'm a little stressed because my budget's too big, and we haven't signed off on the budget yet, and we're starting to film. So I go back to my hotel room to make some adjustments to the budget, to go back, to run the numbers, to take a look at a few things, and go back and talk to Mimi Leader, our director, and Bronco, who's producing it and everything. And I'm in my room, and the phone rings, and it's our producer. And I go, what's up? And he goes, they just shut us down. I go, who, what? And this is on Peacemaker, and they're in New York, and they go, we had an extra who was a minor, who was way in the background, and we didn't have the special work permit for the minor, so they shut us down. I said, the mayor, the governor, everybody said they do everything for us. They shut us down already. We've only been going for about an hour and a half, And I go, okay, I'll be right there. I hang up the phone. I walk toward the door. I take all the pieces of paper with my budget. The phone rings again. I turn around. It's the producer of Zorro. Robert Rodriguez just quit. He's not going to direct the movie. What do you want us to do? And I go, I got to call you back.
Yeah.
I hang up the phone and I go, I don't think I'm going to like this job.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how we started. You know?
Well, it's interesting you talk about New York and filming in New York and LA, and we talked about tax credits earlier, and recently filmed in Georgia, and why,
Right.
with Marvel, right? It was
Yeah.
Marvel filming in Georgia. And there's always a fight about keeping the jobs, because we want the jobs here in Los
Yep,
Angeles.
absolutely.
But there is competition for that. So tell us why it was done in Georgia, and how that impacts the industry as a whole, and how it's changed over the years.
Yeah. Well, obviously the tax credit have a huge financial impact on all this, and I first felt it when, I mean, it's been happening for a while now, but when we did Captain America Winter Soldier with Joe and Anthony, they came to me and they said, look, you know, our preference would be to shoot a certain amount of this in Cleveland, because we're from Cleveland, we have family there, and it would be nice to do that. And then if we could shoot in LA too, that would be terrific. So as their producer, and they'd never done anything of any big scale, I sat them down and I said, look, here's the thing, guys, no matter what, Cleveland they don't have sound stages, there's no tax incentive, there's none of this, there's none of that. I can tell you up front right now that Marvel will never, ever let you film in Cleveland, in LA. And 4 months later, we were filming in Cleveland, in LA. And so that particular one, we ended up still staying in Cleveland, even though financially it cost us a certain amount. We were able to actually shut down the freeways and do a car chase practically, instead of having to have it be a whole visual effects sequence, which made it 10 times better. And then because Marvel had so many shows going, they wanted us to come back so that they could help oversee a production with 2 young directors and have us close and have us in LA. So that's the way it laid out. But as this has grown, like on the 2 Avenger movies, I mean, you're just dealing with such large numbers to put these projects together. And the tax incentive in Atlanta, for your spend in Georgia, you get 30% back. So when you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, it's kind of it's a no-brainer. That's where you're going to be. You know, London, you know, England is another big area for incentives, and Canada is still pretty good. You know, to go up to Vancouver or Toronto or some of those places. But what's happened in Atlanta, because they've been chasing it so much, they've been so aggressive, they've built a lot of sound stages. And basically what breaks my heart is I'm there and I still bring a lot of people from LA, but we're still training people to do what I consider our jobs. So we're hiring local people in Atlanta and training them how to be filmmakers. And they're all great kids there too. I mean,
and that's
so it's
part
all
of the
good.
tax incentive. Sometimes they say, if we give you tax incentives, you've got to hire locally. Not all of them, but some portion.
But you have to financially anyway, because anybody that I bring from here, I have to fly them there and I got to pay for housing. And I've been gone. I worked on the 2 Avenger movies for 2.5 years. And I was gone from LA. I was in Atlanta based for 2 years. You know, and I spent like 2.5 months in Scotland, and I went to a bunch of these other locations, but mainly Atlanta for all that time. So I can't afford to bring a whole crew from here and house them and per diem and all that stuff. So I'm aggressively trying to, once I'm committed to Atlanta, the more local hires that I can do, the better. Whether it's crew, whether it's cast, whatever, that you have to chase it, you know? That's the business plan.
You know, a lot of people have been talking about diversity in the industry, and the importance of making sure that people not only in front of the camera, but in back of the camera, are actually representative of the communities who are going to visit this. And we just saw Crazy Rich Asians, who, first major film that has exceeded all expectations, and a first-time all-Asian cast. And what do you see as maybe happening, and do you see change in that there's that opportunity, or are there things that can be done differently?
You know, if you get it to where you want it to be, you never even ask that question.
Right.
You know, it's just a bunch of people going off and making movies. And the one thing that I love about the business is it's such a collaboration. And you really, you go to these locations or wherever you're filming, or even here, and I might hire 5,000 to 6,000 people on a movie. And when we're working, we can have 200-300 people with cast and crew. Sometimes it can be 500, sometimes it can be 1,000, whatever. And you're working like this because you're working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. At the end of the day, you want people that, I mean, I list, here's the way I list people. There's two groups of people. You get it, you don't get it. That's it. I want to hire all the get-its. I don't care.
We have a lot of get-its here, just so you know, right? Aren't we
Any of that
get-its?
stuff.
Yes, everybody's a get-it here? Okay, just so.
I don't even care about your resume so much. If you get it, I'll teach you. It's like, but those are the people that you want in the trenches. So I find a mix of all different kinds of people in these movies, and I think it only becomes more, it happens more and more. And I also believe that it's really healthy, not just in the way the world should be, but what ends up being on camera. I know when I was working, when I was an AD, I always divided my staff between men and women, because I always wanted a female point of view. I just did. It was important to me because there were things that we would look at that I'd look at a certain way, and they'd look at it a whole different way, and I never even think of it, And that's expanded now to everybody, and I think that's really important, and it's really comfortable, and it's great, But I don't hear quotas, I don't hear numbers or things like that, but I do see it with studios and production companies where they'll push, and let's say, like on Black Panther, and as it should be, they hired as many black crew members as they possibly could to put that together and support that movie. And I think that was really smart, and I think it was great for the movie. And it gave opportunities to people that they haven't had before. I know over the next, year, there are definitely going to be more female directors. And I know that when they do that, a lot of times they'll try to put female producers on, female ADs, and just, try to have that mix. Maybe it's getting caught up a little bit.
And I think, we've always heard the affinity groups who will say, for example, Black Panther, there was a big effort, like everyone go see it that first weekend to make sure that we're supporting those that are ethnically diverse and making sure everyone has an opportunity. Same with Crazy Rich Asians and some others, an important part of it. Now, one of the things we were chatting about was writers, and the difference today from even 10, 15 years ago about the role of a writer in the filming of a movie. Because before it was you write it and you're kind of, they might call you once in a while. But how's that changed?
When early on in my career, you would have a screenplay, and that was the movie you went and made. I mean, and even as the AD, I'd have 8 or 10 weeks of prep, and I'd break down the script and everything, and the writers were already gone. That was the script we were going to make, and there'd maybe be just a few changes that maybe would come from an actor, or even from myself on production, where all of a sudden we had so many nights, and they were really expensive, but it was really tough to get turned around, and I could talk them into making a day sequence instead, or make it an interior where we could black it out and we could shoot it during the daytime to make our schedule a little bit better. Or I felt vulnerable because we had so many exterior pieces, and we're going to shoot in the winter, and guys, we're going to get weathered out, we're going to get hit. Can we rewrite this? Can we rework this? Can we do whatever? And but it was kind of minor changes. Nowadays, and it might have started just because the investments are so big, or maybe because the release dates are so important and you get locked so early that you're chasing these things that, more times than not, when you start prepping these movies, they're not really ready to even be prepped yet. I mean, you're chasing it right from the beginning. You're behind. And, when I worked on, again, Infinity Wars and Avengers 4, I prepped for over a full year before we even started filming. I mean, that's unheard of. The numbers that we looked at, the cost of the movie was gigantic, but we were, juggling such a gigantic cast. Those writers become very involved, and when you can't pull things off, because, it's like, guys, we're never going to be able to do this, or we can't do it in this amount of time, or we can't do it with these amount of resources, or whatever, then we all sit down together and we take a look at that arc. I'll sit in a room a lot of times, and it's very common for writers to have cards up, and they have all the scenes up on a board on the wall, and they're moving things around, we're taking a look at things, and once I've done a breakdown, my analysis of the movie is much different than theirs is, and yet mine has a huge impact creatively and financially to what we're doing. And again, it can be like, guys, we have too many sets. We're jumping all over the place. Even as an audience member, I'm lost. Why are we don't have to do that. We don't have to build those 5 pieces. Not only that, I don't even think they're going to be in the movie. It's like, can't we take that, and consolidate it, and put it into this? Let's spin it all here, And they go, well, let's take a look at it, or you're right, or you're wrong. And I go, okay,
Yeah.
let's take a look at these over here, you know? And they just keep writing. And you have people like Robert Downey Jr., you know, and Scarlett Johansson and Chris Hemsworth and, I mean, Mark Ruffalo and, you know, Paul Rudd, and they have an opinion. You know, they do. There's a lot of script notes that come down with everybody. And so it's evolving and changing all the time. And these actors have lived as these characters for a really long time. They're invested in it. And they have very strong opinions. So it becomes the writers and the directors and myself and the cast and the studio doing this script dance, a lot of times all the way through to make it as good as you can possibly make it and pull it off. And then still, historically with Marvel and with a lot of these big productions, you know when you wrap, you're not done. What will happen is they'll go in and they'll start cutting and they'll keep working and until they get a good rough cut, and then they'll do what they call a friends and family screening, where they'll show it to an audience like this, and you know, how do you feel? Was it funny? Was it scary? Was it exciting? Were you bored? What, you know, what is it? And you try to get some feedback, and then you go and take a look at the movie, and God, the audience was right. I mean, we go 25 minutes with no action. You know, we gotta work on this. And they'll redo the cut, and then they'll go back and do additional photography. Additional photography can be a week, it can be 5 or 6 weeks, you know, and the bigger the investment, the more they're willing to spend on that to make sure that they're protected. And the writers are involved all the way through. They go right through to the release of the film.
And these days, and again, I know this isn't in your part, but I know it's important to you, the marketing of a film, like you can have the best film ever, but they spend a lot of money on marketing. You know, sometimes it's 50% of the film, you know, you add on is going to be for marketing, right? Is that part of it?
Well, it's like, you know, when you, what is the title of this that we're talking about tonight? It's like business and the arts or whatever it is. It's kind of, well, you see everything I'm talking about, it's kind of the business of making movies. I mean, that's really what it is. There isn't anybody I know out there that's just a painter. You know, you've got to take responsibility for the show and for the production, so you're working together all the time. The market is a huge thing, and the guys come in very early on and talk to us, and they'll come to me, and they'll sit down and they go, can we shoot this sequence early? You know, can you move this to the front of the schedule? This would be a great teaser trailer. Can we get this trailer out in April? And I always say, yeah. And they go, well, you know, and then, okay, yeah, it's okay. And then, you know, so then we move it up and we juggle it around. But, so the marketing becomes really huge. And you've got, you know, the press kits that are there, you know, on the set all the time, interviewing everybody and getting behind the scenes and selling it that way, and it's all going to be on the DVD. And, you know, this word of mouth, it's so interesting. I mean, think about movies. It's crazy, but I find it still fascinating that before a movie comes out, I, in my heart, have a very strong feeling on whether it's good or not, and whether I want to see it or not. And it's based on somebody telling me that stuff, because I haven't seen it, and yet I know I'm right.
I know.
So that's what marketing does for
right
you,
most
you
of
know?
the time, right? You're
I'm
right.
always right.
You're always right. Yeah.
I was saying earlier, we talked about this earlier, talking about the best producers, like for me, and it sounds kind of crazy, but I try to never make a decision. I try to make sure that all the people that are working with me make the right decisions.
There you go. There you go. So we're going to open up in a minute to questions, so get ready for your questions. And I think, do we have microphones that we have, or just stand up? Yeah, okay. There you go. Jordan is going to be able to walk around and find you. But if you were sitting in the audience today and thought, I want to get into the entertainment industry, you know, is it the mailroom? Is that still urban legend? What you have to do? What advice would you give to the students in this room as to what they might do to at least be at the right place, right time to do that? Or what skills should they be making sure they're, you know, if you're in marketing at the Nazarian College, of course, that would be something that, you know, hone that skill. Because it's not just in front or in back of the camera. There's a lot of other pieces to it. But you talked about internships a little bit earlier. We did in the green room about what that was, or externships, and how to do that.
I guess it depends on what area you're interested in right now, knowing that there's a good chance that'll change later down the line once you're out there in the field of business. But I would, you know, and I've talked to many people about this, you know, you kind of, you want to be open to anything to begin with. You know, if you can get a job as a production assistant on a set, you know, look into the Director's Guild training program. If you're interested in production and you want to be an AD, look into the program, see what it takes to be eligible for it, take the exam. There's basically no cost to it. And if you get in, you know, you're on your way, you know. Take a look at production companies, take a look at films that are starting up, look at all the different studios, go online and see where they're hiring, what they're doing, go to the personnel department, put together a resume, you know, work on student films. And then when you meet people and you're interacting with them, stay in touch with them. And then people that are working on student films here, the next thing you know, they're going to be out there making movies. And then you call them and you see if there's an opening, you see if you can help them out. You know, I mean, you know, the other day, we, you know, Donald Petrie and myself sat and chatted for a little bit about movies, and then we had 50 people surround us and had a million questions. And it's like, you know, maybe when Donald's doing his next movie, you know, maybe something opens up. You never know. You never know which one's going to open for you. So you want to try kind of everything that you possibly can. And I take a look seriously. Like, I'm kind of at the end of it for myself, but I would take a look at the alumni and see who's out there working and play that card if you can, you know. But I mean, honestly, I still get coffee for folks. I mean, I just do. You know,
Yeah.
You start at the bottom and you're kind of, you just do whatever it takes to make these movies. You're just, you know, you're humble, you know.
Absolutely.
And you just go in there and get dirty and you're just grateful to work. And again, I just think it's the greatest business in the world. But you will start at the bottom no matter what you've done here, unless you are, let's say, a screenwriter and you have this gift where you can actually have a script and somebody wants to go make it. That puts you in a pretty good position. That doesn't happen too often. If you're a really talented artist, if you're a really talented painter or you know, or an actor or something like that, and you're bringing a skill to it that is just really unique, we'll use that gift and that will jumpstart you. But if you're like me, and I think I represent probably most of you, when I first started, I didn't know anything. And my first day on a set was through the training program. You know, they assigned me to a show and all of a sudden I'm working. And my first movie set that I was ever on was the first movie that I ever worked on, which was Young Frankenstein with Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder. And that's when I decided that I wanted to make movies for a living.
Well, David Geffen started in the mailroom, you know, infamous story in him. A friend of ours, Christy McCosker.
You want a good David Geffen story?
Yeah. I'll just say this, so before he does the Geffen story, but Christy, who was Steven Spielberg's assistant, you know, she worked 24 hours.
Absolutely.
Is now co-producing with Steven.
Not co-producing.
Producing on her own.
She's one of the producers. But
she is one of the producers.
The reason I say take the co out is that if a movie gets nominated for Best Picture, it's only the produced by credit that gets to go up there to get the Oscar. Those are the only ones that are.
Right.
So.
You want to be the producer.
You want to be one of
so,
the
yes,
producers.
tell us a David Geffen story.
So David Geffen story. So I get a phone call one day. You know, most of my life I've been in the freelance world. So I get a phone call one day from Albert Brooks, and he wants to make a movie. You guys know Albert Brooks, right? So you don't know Albert? You guys know Albert Brooks, right? Some of you anybody?
Do.
No?
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Anyway, he's hysterical.
Google it.
Very,
okay.
very, very funny guy. So he calls me and he wants to make this movie. So I go and I meet with him. And after 10 minutes, he decides that I'm probably the guy. So he acts out the whole movie for like 2.5 hours. I sit on the couch and I'm just laughing like crazy for like 2.5 hours. So we go to put this movie together. The numbers that I'm going to present to you aren't really the budget, because I don't want to share the reality of that. But let's say that I have $10 million to make the movie. So David Geffen calls me up. This is before DreamWorks. This is before I'd ever met him. He calls me up, "Hi, Michael, welcome aboard. So glad you're producing this movie for Albert," and everything like that. "You know we have $10 million, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Just to be clear, Albert Brooks is $10 million funny, not another penny." If you spend another penny, it's coming out of your pocket or don't make the movie. And I said, okay, we can do that. So I go to Albert, I go, can we do that?
Yeah, can we do it at 10 million?
Because he's going to come after me, you know. And he goes, yeah, we can do that. And I go, okay, so we're making the movie. So we're prepping, and it's really tight, but I think I got a good production plan. But we don't have a female lead yet. And Albert's, you know, the star of it, you know, and I'm the sole producer, and we're scrambling to get this thing together, no female lead. So Albert goes out to dinner with a very good friend, Carrie Fisher. And they have dinner together, have a great meal, and Carrie's friend, Meryl Streep, joins them. And Meryl Streep says, gosh, Albert, I've never done a comedy. I would love to do that. The next morning, I get a phone call from Albert. Guess what? I go, what? Meryl Streep wants to star in a movie with me. I go, great. How are we going to pay for that? He goes, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm going, you know, so it's like, I go, I don't know, you know. I go, I know I only have $10 million. The next thing the phone rings, it's David Geffen. Michael, Albert Brooks is $11 million from me. And we had Meryl.
And Albert had a...
Yes.
My favorite David Geffen story is I'd only been working at DreamWorks for maybe 6 weeks, and we were raising money for a candidate, and that was part of my job. And David had decided he wanted to get more money than he had originally committed to. So on Friday, before the event on Monday, he calls us and asks us, you know, how much money have we raised? And let's just say, I can't remember all the numbers, but it was 50,000. Well, we need to get to 75. And so we're like, oh, we've called a lot of people. And he goes, okay, well, tell me who told you no? Who said they wouldn't give? So we gave him a list, and he said, I want you to call all of those people, and I want you to tell them that I know that they said no. And ask them to reconsider. So I'm new, I'm thinking, my boss Andy Spahn calls me, I was like, okay, and Andy goes, you call, you start the call. So I call this first guy. I said, hey, you know, Wendy Greuel, remember, I'm calling on behalf of David Geffen. He said he hopes you'll reconsider. And he goes, he knows that I said no? And I said, yes, he does. And he goes, the check will be there within the hour. Where do I messenger it? So David was well known for his, not only giving, but his, you know, he knew what he wanted on that. So anyways, well, I want to...
I have one last story, and then we'll get into questions.
No.
So,
I love his stories. Don't we love his stories?
We were talking before about, you know, when you're working on movies, things that can happen. I mean, literally, you know, I've had hurricanes and tornadoes and all kinds of crazy things. But when we were at DreamWorks, we did a movie called Gladiator. And it was one of those things, like, honestly, it was huge. And it was the first really big movie that we were investing in. So we had a lot at stake. And I remember I had to go and meet with Ridley Scott, just one-on-one, which was terrifying again, you know, and come up with a production plan, and, you know, and it was great. And we started moving forward, and we cast it. And Branko Lustig, who produced Schindler's List, and, you know, was very tight with Steven, and had done, you know, our first movies. So he was gonna, you know, he was producing it. So we had filmed all over England. And we had gone to Morocco. We were all over Africa. And now we're in Malta. And we're filming the Colosseum. We're shooting all these scenes. And I'd spent a lot of times overseas on the movie. I came back home. I was in LA. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call. And it's Branko. And I go, hi, Branko. How we doing? He goes, not too good. Oliver Reed just died in a pub. And Oliver Reed, if you guys saw the movie, he was the one that trained all the gladiators, and he had the gladiator school. And the first thought that I had, you know, was just poor Ollie. You know, I felt really bad for him and his family, to talk to the wife and this and that. And then all of a sudden I thought, as a businessman, we've got like 15 scenes left with him. We may not be able to finish this movie, and we've spent so much money. And this could be the hugest insurance claim ever. And I went, Branko, from now on, if you burp, write it down. You document everything that you're doing right now, And I said, I'll be on a plane this afternoon. And then I had to call Stephen, I had to call Walter and Lori, I had to call everybody, tell them what's going on. What we ended up doing is we got Walter and Lori and myself and a screenwriter. And I remember driving to the airport, and the whole time I'm driving to the airport, I'm on my cell phone talking to visual effects companies. No, we didn't scan him. Can we duplicate Oliver Reed? What can we do with the performance? What did they do on The Crow when that guy died, when Jason Lee died? I'm trying to just collect information, trying to figure out what to do. We get to Malta, we meet with Ridley, we go into the editing room, and we pull out all the footage that Oliver's been in. And we analyze every scene, and we take a look at all the things that he hadn't been in yet. And we started like, well, we don't need that scene. We can give those lines to Wendy. She'll cover that, We just started changing and doing all these things, and looking in editorial and doing different takes and different cuts. And we finally kind of solved it, except for one thing. He was disappearing in the movie. It was like all of a sudden he just wasn't in it anymore. Even though we kept the storyline going, here this major character that people were really invested in wasn't there any longer. And we actually figured out the only way to keep him in the movie and protect his performance was to actually kill him in the film. One of my jobs was to go to his widow right after he just died to tell her now that we're going to kill him in the movie to protect his performance. So it was hard.
Must have been hard. No, that must have been hard.
So now we put all this stuff together, and so we designed and wrote a scene where at the Gladiator School we end up killing him, and we did it with photo doubles, we did it with stunt doubles, he was backlit, we did all kinds of things. And then one of the tricks that we did was, he walked to the cell and he's talking to Russell Crowe. So it would be over a double onto Russell, and Russell's talking to the double. But then when we turned around to go on to Oliver, we found a sequence that Oliver had been in, right, where the wardrobe was going to kind of match and everything. And we took that, and that had been cut out of the movie, and we did a rotoscope, and we shot a blue screen, and we did over Russell onto a blue screen, and we added Oliver Reed in it later. We used some of the dialogue from the other scene and made it work in this scene. We did some visual effects and made his mouth work properly and added some other dialogue, did a voice double, right? I mean, we did every trick you could possibly do. Never had one person ever ask me about that sequence. And it wasn't that much longer that I sat at the Oscars and we won Best Picture.
Won Best Picture. Yeah. That was that our first, or American Beauty was the first? I'm dreaming. I remember.
God, they were right next to each other. So like one cost nothing, and one was very expensive, and they both won Best Picture. So, and then we had Private Ryan in there. That was the 3 years in a row that were pretty amazing. And then Shrek was like the fourth year. So we were hot stuff for a while.
We were. Yeah. Oh, it was the good old days in there. But I think the part of that story is that you're a problem solver, and you go back to the get it factor in there. And so we're going to take some questions from the audience, and before they do that, this Nazarian Distinguished Lectures, the series that we've had some incredible speakers, but I have to say Michael has really been one of the most entertaining and educational, and so let's give him a great round of applause. Raise your hand, right, Jordan, and you'll run up. Okay, there's one gentleman right up here. Okay.
I think we can hear you, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First question is, what's the difference between your role and Kevin Feige's role? And second question is, what's the toughest part of being in the entertainment business?
Two good questions. Kevin Feige is a god. I'm like, he is like, he's very, literally, and I'm not working for Marvel right now, so I don't have to do this, but he's brilliant. He understands these movies better than anybody on the planet. He just gets it. And without him, there would be no Marvel. I mean, it really all starts with him. And where Marvel is very unique is you don't hire, like, Ridley Scott and Steven Spielberg wouldn't make it at Marvel. They have their own vision. They're going to go off and do their own thing. They're not going to take notes from anybody. At Marvel, it starts with Kevin. And I believe that, like, as talented and great as Joe and Anthony Russo are, and all the other directors that work at Marvel, I believe we also were there to help support this vision that Kevin has of the whole universe. And it's all creative with him. It's just driven, it's all creative. So all the casting meetings, all the script meetings, all those things, he's involved in all of it. And then Louis D'Esposito, who works with him, is head of physical production. He's the one that I work most closely with because that's the budget and the organization of all these movies, the physical production part of it. But Kevin is the studio. And the hardest thing, I mean, the couple of things I can think of. Number one, I'm divorced. Really common. I mean, it's very tough to be a gypsy, to work on these films, to be gone for extended periods of time. The other thing is that I think that you see this in me. I think you saw it in Donald when he spoke the other day. I think you see it in the people that have been successful in the business. I love it. It's such a big, huge part of my life. And that's impactful when you're married to somebody. You become big in all this stuff, and you're so caught up in it. And there's all these other things to life. So if you want to be a good husband, and you want to be a good father, and you want to be all these other things, there just aren't enough hours in the day to do all that stuff. So I think being a really good family man, if you're a freelance type of producer or production person that travels a lot, that's really, really hard. And then it's a freelance business. When you finish a gig, you're just unemployed, and you're not sure when the next paycheck's going to come, for sure. So that's a little bit scary sometimes. So I think those are the two toughest things.
That's great, thank you. Gentleman here, go ahead and stand up.
Hi.
She has a microphone right there, and then everyone else can hear you too.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
My bad. My name's Boo, and I wrote and directed a movie called Certainty about a black man doing a virtual reality experience through a white man. I'm just asking, as like a director that didn't go to film school and doesn't have any connections like that, what's the best way to get that movie seen in front of producers or studios or production houses?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's a little bit outside of kind of what I do, but will they do a screening of the movie for you here? And if they will, can you invite other people to do it? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how to get it started. I don't know, but I mean, that would be something that I would ask. They might say no, I don't know, but I'm just saying what you want to do is get your work out there. Now, I'm not saying it has to be a screening, but what you really want to do is be able to show it. Now, you can show it on your computer to somebody too, so, well, that's what it is. So now you got to get it to the right people, and you got to, and so look at, the best thing in the world is, if you can find an agent to represent you, and, then you've got someone that's actually making those phone calls and those contacts that you don't have. It's always a tough one. How do you find that agent, I'm not sure, Are there any contacts within the school here that can help you, though, with this product? Even if you go to, like you go to Nate or one of the professors or something like that, is there anybody that can really give you suggestions? Because I've never really worked in development or tried to put something together off the ground like that. I come in kind of when it's already in place, and I get hired by the studio to make something. So I don't know. And the other thing is are there other young filmmakers that that you've interacted with in the journeys that you're on that have had any level of success that you can talk to them about what they've done to get it out there and to show it, a bit? Are there agencies that are, that are looking for young directors like yourself that might give you a shot, and show them if you got it or not?
And there's some of those agencies and studios that, are starting to create some programs like that, so.
They definitely are. They definitely are.
Thank you.
How long does the piece run? Right. another thing, I wonder about film festivals or things like that. I'm just trying to think of where you could get it out to, if you could present it to them, if there's any way that they might screen it or do that. Right. Can you come up with a shorter version of it? Can you get in there and cut it down?
That's what he has. That's oftentimes what he has to do. So,
Yeah. But I mean,
yeah.
you know, I'll just put it this way: if you can get it shown in 15 minutes and you can't, nobody will look at it at 22. I bet you can cut it down.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you.
I mean,
very much.
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how you can get it shown. I don't really know. So, but good luck to you.
I'm
Yeah.
going to go to this gentleman here in the red shorts.
Good evening, my name is Jamal. My question is, what has been the biggest failure you've endured and what did you learn from it?
Biggest failure?
Yeah.
My biggest personal failure is probably my divorce. My biggest failure in film, I worked with a director named Michael Cimino, and I did The Deer Hunter with him, and we won Best Picture. And it was one of the best experiences ever. Really challenging. He was really tough, but a great cast, a great crew, traveled all over the world, and we won Best Picture. Subsequently, he put together another movie, right, with another great cast and another great script and another great crew, and that was Heaven's Gate. And I worked on that one too. And absolutely nobody went, and we folded United Artists. So on a career level, that has to be probably the biggest flop that anybody's ever touched, you know. And with the same director, we won Best Picture. So, you know, none of these things are given. I mean, even like Steven, you know, people that are geniuses that really know how to make movies and are brilliant, you just don't, you know, you're not 100% ever. It doesn't matter who you are. And, but it's an interesting business that if you fail, if you're not so much for me, I can fail upwards. I mean, I can fail on something and still get another job. I mean, just that I survived that, I actually got a lot of calls later on for work. But if you're a creative person, if you're a screenwriter, if you're an actor, if you're a director, and you have failures, there's a chance you may never get a chance to work again. Those are the kind of pressures you're under. You may never, ever get that opportunity. And on the other hand, which is really unique about the business, is if you are successful, I mean, if you're successful, it's hard to get pumped up like a peacock and everything because you realize there's thousands of people that have all contributed to it, you know. But it's a weird business in the sense that you can actually get an award for working hard, just like everybody works hard at their jobs, right? But I can actually get a trophy for working on something if people like my work, you know. I can get an Oscar. I still find that to be very bizarre.
Yeah, nothing like that. Nothing
who
like that.
Who gets that?
Who gets to do that? There was a gentleman in the back. Yes, way in the back.
Hi, my name is Katrell Daniels. I'm an actor and composer. I just had a question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about getting like cold calls or cold emails if someone feels they have something to bring to a project you're doing?
Well, I get those a lot. I mean, you just do. I mean, you're kind of out there. But again, I'm kind of a gun for hire. So for me personally, you know, that's, you know, if a director's, you know, writing me, or an actor or a composer or a, you know, or whatever, somebody's got a script or whatever, I'm not the right guy for that. You know, I'm not that guy that does it. But you get a lot of that where I do follow through on stuff. And I try to always respond, even though I say I'm not looking for something right now, or I'm not in development, or I really have nothing to do with the music end of it, you know. I always try to write something because I know how hard it is out there. But with assistant directors and, you know, and production people that would be working under me on shows or whatever, I always try to write back to them. I check their resumes. I try to keep things on file as much as I can. And like if I'm in Atlanta and I get 20 emails from ADs that are locals and I know I'm going to do a show there, well, I'll bring them in and interview them. And if I can find a spot for them, then that'd be great. But like, as I said, with a composer, you know, that's usually, you're either hired by, at least in the projects I'm involved in, you're either hired by the director who's in love with you and talks the studio into hiring you and making your deal, or the studio themselves, you know, where they either want to give you a shot, you know, or they've been in business with you before and they like your work. And there used to be, I don't know if there still is, but there's only 1 or 2 agencies that really handle composers. So you know, if that's what you're doing and you're really interested in moving forward that, I'd take him to look at the agencies that do represent composers and see if they're looking for talent and see if they're willing to have a meeting with you.
Thank you.
You know?
Okay, yeah, I didn't even know there was agents for composers. I have agents for acting, but I'm gonna look into that. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. Good luck to you.
I'm going to go. We haven't had any young ladies here, so this lady, young lady in the red, yes, you. I promise I'll come over here. I'm not geographically discriminating. I know you're over here.
Hi, my name is Nardine Nadeem. I'm a freshman in marketing. I just wanted to ask, since your job requires, it demands a lot from you, like traveling and problem solving, how do you manage that stress?
The stress?
Yeah.
He's got some gray hair right here.
I was scared coming here today. Oh. It's, you know, it's not easy sitting in front of a group of people, you know, you're going, God, I want to be kind of, seem like I'm smart or funny or something, you know, that they all fall asleep, shit, you know. It's like, you know, this was like kind of stressful. Making movies for me, it's kind of that I know how to do that, you know. And it's a little bit like life. I think if you look at all of it, it's just overwhelming. It just is, you know. If I have to take a look at like the whole month in front of me, I just freak out, you know. But I can handle today, you know, and I can probably handle tomorrow, you know. So it's like, I think a lot of times you don't look at, you know, you just take each step, and you also realize you can only do so much, you know. So you can't put expectations on yourself that are unrealistic. But it's like anything. It's like you know, taking a class. When you first start a class and the professor gives you what the agendas are going to be, you know, what you're going to cover for the next 3 months, it's just, oh my God, how are we going to get through all? I remember, look at this book, you know, and all this stuff. It's like, well, read page 1, you know, and then get to page 2, and the next thing you know, you read the book. And that's kind of what I do, you know. And the main thing too is that I'm that guy that gets that first call. But when shit goes down, I'm that guy. So the thing is like, I'd better not overreact. You know, I've got to stay calm in all this, even though deep inside I might be a little freaked out. But I have actually I'm going to write a book.
All right.
So the title of the first book, right? Because some of the things that get asked of me and some of the things that come up daily is, you know, how do you not freak out and everything? But a lot of times my response is one word. Really? And I do that all the time. And I'm all, really? I mean, to say how you want to say it depends on, you know, whether, you know, really, huh, you know. And sometimes it means you're going to think about it, and sometimes it means like, you know, yeah, really? Yeah, we're not doing that. So it's like, you know, those kinds of things, right? And then my second book that I was going to write, if the first one does okay, is, you know, you're right, it must be my fault.
Yeah. That's a good title of a book. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go to this gentleman right here.
Hi, my name is Nerys Miner. I had 2 questions.
Yeah.
One being, how did you get to where you are working with Marvel, and how do you think that's helped your career? And then you said you're not technically employed with Marvel right now, so like, where do you see yourself going next from there?
How did I get in with Marvel, and how did, well, when I was head of production at DreamWorks, I interacted with all the other heads of production, all the studio executives. So I had come up basically being a production dog, working, you know, with the camera and being on sets and making movies. And there's this whole thing that Wendy and I became a part of this corporate world that we were in, which was the other side of the camera, which was fascinating, but it gave me a chance to work with all the other studios and make a lot of contacts. So when I went back to producing again, I left there after 10 years when DreamWorks got bought by Paramount Studios. I went back in the freelance world of producing, and I knew Louis D'Esposito, who was head of production at Marvel, very well, and I'd met all of them before. And they liked me, and they were looking for producers, and they had a couple projects, so they hired me. I did the first one, it did well. I did the second one, and just kind of kept going, So I learned kind of how to do those movies, I think. And what I want to do next, I don't know. I'm 70 years old. I've been making movies for 50 years. So I feel like I'm still a little.
They're all looking like he can't be 70 because he looks so young, right? That's exactly it.
I still feel like I'm a little kid, so I still can kind of keep up with the pace and everything. But I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do it. Maybe I'll do it forever, but I'm not chasing it as much. I'm not automatically taking the next thing. I've been in discussions for some things. I've turned down a lot of things, the last couple of months, but there's something I could do next year, actually, with some of those folks. But I think I'll see how I feel toward the end of the year if I want to do that or not. But I mean, honestly, like today, this is really enjoyable for me. I love being able to, I've been doing this for a while.
Professor Grillo, can't you? Yes. Questions, one here, and this gentleman who really wants it, and then I think Michael's going to be able to stay for a little bit to answer some questions, but I know some have to get to class too, so we're going to take two. This gentleman and then the gentleman back there.
All right. Hello, my name is Jesus Castro, and my question is, you mentioned you were a good problem solver. How did you gain that skill?
How did I become a good problem solver?
Yeah.
How'd you get that skill?
Oh. Survival. I think that's just like, it's like, let me ask you a question. As a student, right, and you go into a class, you get thrown a lot of stuff, and you got to figure it out. You got to figure out how to do it, right? And you got to figure out how to solve it and be successful at it. I think those are skills that we probably all have to certain levels. I think that, I don't think the scale of things bother me too much. It's like if you took a budget and it was, and it was $100,000, I would care and worry as much about that movie as I would if you moved the decimal point over and it was $100 million, because you never have enough money and you're just fighting for everything and you're just trying to solve it to be most efficient. And I just want it to go well. I want the movies to be good. I mean, you're putting so much time and effort into them, and when you make a good movie, it just feels wonderful. And when you actually sit in an audience and people love it, it's kind of great. It really is, So that's part of the problem solving. You're challenged all the time, and you have to solve those things to be successful. And plus the experience of doing it. You're just challenged all day, every day. Like if you don't like getting asked questions and coming up with answers, don't be a producer and don't be a director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think problem solving too for many of the students and all, that work and go to school and help their family, that's a lot of problem solving. That's trying to do a lot of different things, which is what you do as well as a producer. Okay, the gentleman in the back. And the last question there.
Hi, I got a question. So earlier this month, there's been regarding some reshoots for Avengers 4. I was wondering if you were there, can you tell us a bit more information about it? And second question is, do you also know the Avengers title for the new one upcoming?
We've got some smart kids here, students.
Yes and yes.
I thought he was going to say, really?
I'll put it this way. James Gunn, one of the most talented, most amazing directors ever. I think it's a shame he's not doing the movie, to be honest with you. But there's a whole level of all of that that's going on, and it's like, it's a really, really interesting time. But, he basically got fired for tweets not for actions they did, for tweets. So that's up for discussion. I mean, that would be a really interesting discussion that we could all have and talk about the way the world's changing. And, you know, certainly for certain types of behavior, they're just have never been acceptable, but now it's coming to the forefront now and people are paying the penalty for it. Was his behavior high enough on that, you know, offensive enough to that? And nobody condones what he said, including himself. He apologized for that. Should he have gotten fired or not? I don't know. Interesting discussion. But a talented guy, you know, and I don't know how they make Guardians without him. So that's my personal opinion, but yeah.
So we know that you were successful tonight based on, I didn't see anyone leave. There's more people that want to ask questions, and the engagement factor, and I think that for us this has been a really, really special night. And we had not seen each other since 2005, so this is a reunion for us to be able to get to see each other. And I think you can see that we have an incredible, incredible group of students here who are engaged, who we're going to see in the entertainment industry in the future, and have learned a lot from Michael Grillo, from someone who really is one of the best in the business. Let's give him a great round of applause.